It has been 238 days since the change in the United States. And we're very happy and very honored to have someone with us today who has experienced the change and who has experienced 4 years in the White House, which have marked him, of course, which have marked us. And we're very happy to have him here to share his experiences with us. He has been 12 years in the House of Representatives. He has been 4 years the governor of his home state, Indiana. And as I said, for the last 4 years, he has been the 48th Vice President of the United States. Please give a very warm welcome here to Interlaken, Vice President Michael Pence.
Well, vielen Dank, meine Damen und Herren. And that's about all my current working language skills. So thank you for the warm welcome. It is wonderful to be here in Switzerland, an honor to be among so many distinguished leaders in business, government, and academia, to see all of you gathered together for the Swiss Economic Forum 21. Give yourselves a round of applause. This is an inspiring sight. You know, we passed through a time of great challenges in my country and around the world. In the United States, like everywhere, we've dealt with the coronavirus pandemic. In our country, we face a border crisis, a hurricane, and a chaotic end to 20 years of war in Afghanistan. But while the challenges we face together are great, I believe that new horizons beckon, and that I'm confident that we can overcome any challenges that we face, even as we are today, with right leadership, with partnership, and with hewing to the ideals that have generated the highest quality of life the world has ever known. So I thank you for the warm welcome and for the invitation to be with you today. This is my first trip overseas since completing my term as Vice President. While I no longer speak on behalf of the American government, I do wish today to speak with some authority on the views of the vast majority of the American people who I had the privilege of serving in various capacities and especially traveling amongst over the last 4 years. So to begin with, let me say with absolute confidence that the American people are proud and grateful for the strong and vibrant relationship between the United States and Switzerland. Many of our citizens trace their family roots to Switzerland. You heard yesterday from the Associate Administrator of NASA, who grew up, I'm told, just across the lake from here. More than 80,000 Swiss nationals currently call the United States home, and America is incredibly enriched by their contributions to our culture, to our business life, and to our society. And I'm especially proud of all the Trump-Pence administration accomplished to strengthen the ties between the United States and Switzerland. Especially, I want to thank a leader whose dedication and devotion made so much of that progress possible. Our former ambassador to Switzerland, Ambassador Ed McMullen. Many of you got to know Ambassador McMullen, and I can tell you that Ambassador McMullen told America's story to Switzerland, and he carried the case for Switzerland back to the United States of America, and our relationship was strengthened as a result. From day one, after the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression, our administration advanced policies focused on growth, and Switzerland responded. Over the last 4 years, foreign direct investment by Swiss companies in the United States surged by $300 billion annually, doubling over the course of our administration. Today, Swiss companies provide nearly 500,000 American jobs, pay generous salaries that are literally twice the national average. And last year, Switzerland became the 6th largest direct investor in the United States of America, a testament not only to a flourishing business climate, but to the thriving partnership between our nations. And on behalf of the American people, Let me say how grateful we are for the confidence that Swiss business leaders and Swiss companies have placed on the people of the United States of America. You have our thanks. And it's been a two-way street. Today, more than 1,600 American companies do business here in Switzerland, adding $300 billion to your economy and supporting, I'm told, more than 85,000 jobs. And as business leaders, you know that any progress on the bottom line is never a result of just random chance. It's more often a result of careful design. And under the Trump-Pence administration, the renewal of American prosperity in our first 3 years was no accident. It was a choice. We set out to revive the most powerful economy the world had ever seen, and it worked. In 4 short years, our administration achieved groundbreaking trade deals, the highest household income in our history, the lowest poverty rates, record energy production, 7 million new jobs, and the lowest unemployment rate in over half a century, with the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded for African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Millions of Americans and indirectly millions of people around the world were lifted out of poverty as we saw our economy rally and surge. But after all the hardship the world has endured over the past year, I expect, gathered here at SCF 21, you're asking the question that many are asking today. Can the United States, can Switzerland, can other developed nations quickly regain our momentum? Can we regain our stride? Well, I stand before you today to say from my heart, I believe the answer is yes. If our leaders make wide choices, if we embrace the pro-growth policies that unleashed an American middle-class miracle over the last 4 years, I believe we will see the economies of the West revive and revive more quickly than we could possibly imagine. Now, part of that agenda for us began with tax relief and tax reform. And many of you in business in Switzerland took great note of it. In 2017, we passed the largest tax cuts and tax reform in American history. We cut taxes for individuals, for working families, but we also made capital investments fully and immediately deductible. We lowered our business tax from one of the highest in the developed world to one of the most competitive. More than 6 million American workers received wage increases, bonuses, and increased benefits as a direct result of the tax relief. At the same time, we launched the most expansive regulatory reform campaign ever conceived. We actually eliminated 8 old regulations for every new regulation that we adopted and put on the books. The lesson from our experience in those first 3 years of our administration, I believe, is clear. Nations that want to get their economy back to running at full speed should let people keep more of what they earn, get the government off the backs of those that create jobs, and let people drive from business and from their own pocketbooks the kind of spending and the investment that will power economic recovery. Another lesson from our experience is that trade means jobs, but only when trade is free and fair. With that approach, our administration signed historic trade agreements with Japan, with Korea, with the European Union, reducing barriers, opening new markets, and growing commerce between our nations. And after much doing, we actually signed the largest trade deal in American history. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. And I can tell my friends gathered here at the Swiss Economic Forum that if we had had a second term, I have no doubt we would have signed a free trade agreement with Switzerland. Now, many of you in this room worked alongside our administration and businesses in the United States, and we made tremendous progress. We got closer than ever before, but unfortunately, our time ran out. But I want to encourage everyone here, don't give up. Keep working. With so much commerce between our nations, with so many powerful ties in business and among families, I strongly believe the time has come for a free trade agreement between the United States and Switzerland, and I pledge to you, I will continue to add my voice to the cause of a U.S.-Swiss FTA. But there were changes on the global scene and in attitudes in the United States. Under our administration, we changed the American consensus on China and greatly impacted the view of China in nations around the world. The truth is, many nations now recognize that the current Chinese regime harbors competitive, if not adversarial, intentions toward nations that refuse to submit to their demands. In many ways, the world has awakened to the fact that the Chinese Communist Party aspires not merely to join the community of economically developed nations, but to sit atop a new global order, created in its own image, a world in which freedom is constrained, but Beijing's power is not. In the wake of a devastating worldwide pandemic compounded by Beijing's lack of transparency, many in the United States and many across the West now recognize that China's current leaders cannot be trusted. So I want to applaud Switzerland for joining the United States in demanding that China come clean about the origins of the coronavirus. The evidence strongly suggests that the coronavirus leaked out of a Chinese lab after millions of deaths across the globe. China must be held accountable. The world deserves to know what the Chinese Communist Party knew about COVID-19, when they knew it, and what actions they took to protect their people and the world. The lessons of the coronavirus pandemic also revealed certain vulnerabilities in our global supply chains. That's why our administration ordered federal agencies to purchase certain prescription drugs exclusively from American factories to bring vital medical supply chains back home to the United States. And I expect Switzerland is giving consideration to the same thought. No free nation should ever leave the lives of citizens in the hands of a communist dictatorship. That said, as we reflect on the lessons of the coronavirus pandemic, I believe that what America and free nations of the world accomplished in the face of this pandemic will in time be regarded as one of the greatest feats in human history. As chairman of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, we oversaw the largest national mobilization since World War II. We reinvented testing. We saw to the manufacture and delivery of billions of supplies of medical equipment. We took decisive action to provide financial support to businesses across the United States. It was an unprecedented partnership between government and the private sector, not only domestically, but internationally. And thanks to American and Swiss companies partnering on the development of groundbreaking vaccines, and thanks to the funding of the American people through Operation Warp Speed, in just 9 months, we developed 2 safe and effective vaccines. Operation Warp Speed is a true medical miracle, of which we should all be proud. $5.25 billion vaccines doses have been administered worldwide, and countless human lives have been saved. Groundbreaking, record-setting, medical innovation made possible by free enterprise and public support. You know, like all of you, after a year of enormous challenges, the American people are ready to set their eyes on new horizons. But you should know, some leaders in our country are stuck on looking backwards, intent on repeating the mistakes of the past. In the United States, I regret to inform friends here in Switzerland that missteps by the new American administration could jeopardize our recovery and even our security. Amidst a border crisis, a crime wave affecting our major cities, as we speak, the Biden administration and its allies in Congress are working to pass $5 trillion in new spending and what would ultimately be the largest tax increase since 1968. If passed, our corporate tax rate would once again be among the highest in the world. The average American family would see their tax bill increase. Countless investments that had come to the United States would have reason to rethink. It's not just taxes, but more regulation under the guise of a Green New Deal are well in the works. Canceling American energy pipelines while approving Nord Stream 2 and rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, even though since 2000, carbon emissions have declined in the United States and Europe. in many instances beyond the goals of the Paris Climate Accord. I mean, we know what happens when leaders weave government policy out of ideology instead of common sense. We need to look no further than the administration that preceded ours that oversaw the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. But I can assure you, and it'll come as no surprise, that the loyal opposition in the United States is going to do everything in our power to prevent the current administration from repeating the mistakes of the past. And we're going to continue to champion the ideas that freedom works and that the surest path back to robust economic growth is economic freedom. And finally, to regain our momentum, every freedom-loving nation must reaffirm our belief that security is the foundation of our prosperity. Under our administration, we made the largest increases in spending on our national defense since the days of the Reagan administration. And acknowledging Switzerland's historic neutrality and not being formally a part of NATO, I couldn't be more proud that we worked to revive NATO with a little bit of tough love, and our NATO allies committed to increase defense spending by $400 billion. The result of which, nations are safer, our transatlantic bonds are stronger, and Europe is more secure. You know, there's an old saying that peace comes through strength, and weakness arouses evil. And I believe the evil now rising in Afghanistan is a testament to this ancient truth. As a patriotic American, I am loath to criticize my country on foreign soil. But as the father of a United States Marine with a son-in-law in the United States Navy, I cannot come before this distinguished group and be silent. The Biden administration's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan was a disgrace, and it dishonored the service and sacrifice of American and allied forces who took the fight to terrorists in Afghanistan these past 20 years. And it never should have happened. When our administration left office, we had set the conditions for a dignified end to 20 years of war. No American casualties for 18 months. Neither the Taliban or the Afghan government were mounting any major offensive. We had the lowest military presence for the United States since 2001, and Bagram Air Base was secure. What was to be a gradual and orderly withdrawal based on conditions met by the Taliban came to look more like hasty retreat and surrender. And let me be clear, the American people were ready to bring our troops home, but not like that. The manner in which the Biden administration conducted the chaotic withdrawal, the trail of broken promises, the death of 13 heroic American service members, scores of civilians, and the incomprehensible decision to leave Americans and Afghan allies behind is deeply offensive to the American people. And I expect the people of our country will be debating the failings of the current administration in Afghanistan for some time. But in the wake of these tragic events, some around the world have begun to wonder whether the United States will remain freedom's indispensable nation. You know, the same question was asked 77 years ago. And it was answered on the beaches of Normandy, in the fields of France, and on countless battlefields by generations ever since. You know, this time last week, my wife Karen and I stood on the bluff overlooking Omaha Beach, surrounded by rows and rows of heroes that fell in that battle so long ago. I thought of those heroes who won that ground and the generations who stepped forward to defend freedom ever since. Let me assure you, America will never be defined by one man or one administration. It will always be defined by the enduring and indomitable spirit of the American people. America is the land of the free because we are the home of the brave. And the armed forces of the United States will remain the greatest force for good the world has ever known. So you may be confident that America will remain the nation where every man, woman, and child are free to dream. Every entrepreneur is free to flourish, and every citizen is free to live and work and worship according to the dictates of their conscience. And no matter how far our government may stray from time to time, the American people will always right the ship and set the course back toward liberty, security, and prosperity. And America will remain a bright beacon of hope for freedom-loving people all over the world. And with our friends here in Switzerland and around the globe who share our ideals, I know we will face these new horizons for freedom and with faith. Winston Churchill spoke before the Congress in the midst of World War II, and he said words that are enshrined in the narthex of our national cathedral. He said, "He must indeed have a blind soul who cannot see that some great purpose is being worked out here below, of which we have the privilege of being faithful servants." The Bible tells us where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. That means when we make freedom our cause, economic freedom, personal freedom, we make His work on this earth our very own. And freedom always wins. And I am confident, from the United States to Switzerland to freedom-loving nations around the world, that we will make our world safer, more prosperous, and freer than ever before. So help us God. Thank you all very much. God bless you. God bless Switzerland, and God bless the United States.
Mr. Vice President, thank you very much. If I can ask you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much for these powerful words. Not many people may know that, but I'm in the presence of a colleague. You have been moderating a talk show on television and on radio, a syndicated talk show, for years. In your experience, you know both sides. What is more difficult, asking the right question or giving the right answer?
It was easier asking the questions, Urs, to be honest with you.
Okay, so I've got the easy part, thank God.
But it was great.
Let's see what answers you can give us. I want to discuss some current issues, and some of them you address them in your speech as well.
Please.
Let's speak about Afghanistan. The decision to withdraw. Let's be clear, that wasn't a decision by the administration of Joe Biden, President Biden. It has been decided before, and the former administrations have all backed it. 20 years of war in Afghanistan, $300 million per day spent on that war. Was it all in vain?
I was in Washington, D.C. on September 11, 2001. Our nation was attacked by al-Qaeda from Afghanistan. And taking the fight to al-Qaeda and to the Taliban government that harbored them and aided them was just and right. And in all of my travels, when I was in the Congress, when I was governor and as vice president, traveling to Afghanistan, I witnessed firsthand the extraordinary courage of our armed forces, taking the fight to the enemy all those years. When we came into office, though, it's noteworthy, to your point, Urs, that President Trump made clear that he wanted to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. But early on, we increased the number of forces, leaned farther in, providing additional air support and coordination to the Afghan National Army in the hopes of bringing the Taliban to the negotiating table. And we did. They came to the negotiating table. And
was that a good decision, to talk to the Taliban?
It would be in early 2019 that the Secretary of State of the United States, at the direction of the President, negotiated an agreement. But it's important that people understand it was all conditions-based. It was on the condition that there would be no more American casualties. And until the tragic loss of 13 U.S. service members, we hadn't had an American casualty in Afghanistan for 18 months. It was contingent on the Taliban working with the Afghan national government. And we set a timetable that we believe made sense because it would have the withdrawal occur before the traditional fighting season began in Afghanistan. Now, it's important to remember the context. When we negotiated that agreement, it was a matter of weeks after we had taken action to take down the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. And it was just 4 months after we had taken action to dismantle the ISIS caliphate in Syria and take down their leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. And so when President Trump communicated, and I was there when he did, directly with Mullah Baradar, he made it clear that there would be swift and severe consequences if the Taliban didn't live up to their agreement. And I know they believed him. They need to look no further than the 58 cruise missiles we sent into Syria when the red line was crossed, something a previous administration had not done, and the action against ISIS in Syria and the action against the Iranian general. I think more than anything else, what changed with the changing of the administration was the lack of a credible threat of the use of force. The Taliban knew that we were going to hold them accountable to the conditions-based withdrawal plan, have an orderly withdrawal. But the circumstances under which the Biden administration set it into motion literally created the hasty retreat and ultimately the surrender that tragically unfolded in the last 20 days.
In a way, they took advantage also of the change of government and change of administration. Begs the question, what mistakes were done 20 years before? Did you just simply back the wrong people? Because that's what a lot of people are seeing now, the sign that this change has come so quickly and that the Taliban's moved so swiftly through the country means that there was a deep misunderstanding and a deep anger towards those people that the West, United States, and all the other countries backed for so many times. Did you back the wrong people?
I don't believe we did. And in fact, while there were no American casualties in the last 18 months, the losses among Afghan soldiers fighting for their own country continued to be serious. And literally tens of thousands of Afghanis gave their lives over the last 20 years, many multiples of the some 2,400 Americans that fell. But I truly do believe that that what was lacking in this instance was the Taliban seeing an administration committed to a position of strength versus an administration that was prepared to withdraw under whatever conditions emerged. And it was heartbreaking to see it unfold. And the American people are deeply offended by it. And I expect there'll be a very intense debate in the United States for some time to come.
Which is already going on. Let's switch country and let's speak about the country you alluded to as well, China. You have been critical towards China for years. And I found an interesting quote about China where you say, they possess a central authority, which is ugly in all kinds of ways, but can get certain things done. And we have a 230-year-old constitution. That sounds rather pessimistic. Does that mean, on the other hand, that the ideas of democracy, the ideas of our Western world, of the freedom of the Western world, always fall short in the end, long term, against China? Does that mean China is the new superpower?
Well, there's no question that China is today, from the United States perspective, the greatest external threat to our ongoing economic vitality, and may well our security. I mean, China's military provocations in the South China Sea, intruding themselves on freedom of navigation, so vital to global commerce. China's abuse of human rights, Muslim Uyghurs, Christian pastors in jail, Muslim Uyghurs rounded up by the hundreds of thousands. And as I mentioned, the lack of transparency about the coronavirus pandemic. I think clearly what I can say to friends in Switzerland is the national consensus in America on China has changed. And there'll be no going back. And
What does that mean?
Well, it means that frankly, when I arrived in Congress in 2001, there was always the belief that if you created greater economic exchange with China, if you nurtured the free market or commerce within China, you would see the emergence of political liberalization, of personal freedoms, of private property, of freedoms of speech and religion. But what we've all learned, and I thought what President Trump put a fine point on in our administration, was that actually the opposite has happened. That as the United States, the most prosperous economy in the world, and the West engage China, we've actually seen China become more authoritarian. And I think it's had an impact on attitudes far beyond the United States. People understand that China cannot be trusted, the Chinese Communist Party. I'm always quick to separate the Chinese people. There are millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of good, decent, hardworking people in China. But the Chinese Communist Party today, as I said, has its aim not to join the international economic order, but to sit atop a new order where essentially what we're accustomed to, what we cherish and celebrate in the history of our two great nations, in the manner of freedom and economic liberty and privacy, these are side issues of less importance. Now, I will say, though, I expect we'll continue to hear people make predictions about the future.
It's in our nature. We have to speak about new horizons.
But I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist, and I'm old enough. I'm older than you. I can tell by the color of our hair. But I remember back in the 1970s and the 1960s, there was a belief that Soviet Union had a superior economic model. There's a great deal written about it, the efficiencies of the Soviet Union. And then another governor who happened to grow up in the Midwest in the United States came along, and he said he believed the Soviet Union was a house of cards. He believed that if we revived our economy, if we rebuilt our military, that the Soviet Union would essentially collapse. And he was mocked, he was ridiculed. But it did. Shortly after President Reagan left office, the Berlin Wall came down, the Soviet Union collapsed, and it's now sent to the ash heap of history. And I believe that the power of freedom, the power of free enterprise, everything that you're celebrating here at the Swiss Economic Forum, that's the future. And China will either come to recognize that and begin to embrace freedoms, or I believe China ultimately will be left behind. But my hope and my prayer is that the good people of China, a country that has a great tradition of family, a great tradition of trade. That the good people of China may well someday rise up.
You're hopeful that
demand government as good
prevail.
as their people.
You gave me a great keyword with President Xi and President Reagan, which brings me to the presidency that we saw before. Can I ask you about the election? Is that okay?
Sure.
Was it rigged? We never heard you say so. So, we want to take advantage of you coming here. And full disclosure, not many people here think it was. But we heard about your administration that it was. Can we have it once and for all, maybe?
Well, there were voting irregularities that took place in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic.
Were they decisive?
Where there were states that changed the rules of voting without having laws adopted at the state level. But at the end of the day, we have a system under the Constitution of the United States, and that is that states certify the results of their elections. And they send those electoral votes to the Congress of the United States to be opened and counted. And I was there on the day on January 6th, when, after a tragic day, where violence was ultimately quelled by law enforcement officers and Capitol Police, we reconvened, we opened the votes, and we counted the votes, and we finished the people's work under the Constitution of the United States of America.
Can I take these words and interpret them in a way that your president, President Trump, was wrong in assuming that the vote was rigged, was not clear?
Well, what I can tell you is that we have a system.
And that system was in place. You talked about January 6th. It was a dark day for the United States.
It was.
The Capitol was attacked. You were in the Capitol. You were harassed. The pro-Trump protesters coming into the Capitol threatened you. I'm not going to say what they said, but it was really, really nasty. You had to be evacuated. How angry were you that day that you had to live through that experience?
You know, my father was a combat veteran in the Korean War. Came home with a medal on his chest, and he put it in the drawer and never got it out again. I was raised with a very deep sense of duty. I knew what my duty was that day. And I went to the Congress of the United States to do my duty, to preside over a joint session of Congress that would open and count the votes, the electoral votes for president and vice president that had been certified by the states. I never imagined the violence that would ensue took place. And I was angry. I was angry at what I saw and how it reflected on the 74 million people who supported the president and I in the election, who I'm convinced would never do that, there or anywhere else. The hardworking, patriotic, law-abiding citizens that stood with us over the last 4 years. But in the end, my focus was on my duty, Urs. My wife was with me, my daughter was with me. We never left the building. Some of the security detail wanted me to leave, but I wasn't going to leave my post. I thought it was important that we stay. I thought it was important that we reconvene. I thought it was important that the world see that our system worked. That whatever differences we have, whatever controversies arise, that we're a nation of laws.
You recently said you will never see eye to eye with President Trump on what happened that day. Did you in a way felt abandoned by him, by what he did, by his actions?
Well, I'm going to save that for another day. Let me tell you, I'll always be proud of everything we accomplished for the American people over the last 4 years. When you see Switzerland go from the 8th largest foreign direct investor in the United States to the 6th in just 4 short years, that was because people in this country saw that what we were doing was working. And what we did to revive the economy, what we did to rebuild the military. You know, my son is a United States Marine. One of my unworthy son-in-laws is a pilot in the United States Navy. And to see what we did to rebuild a military at a time of so many changes around the world and so many new and widening challenges strategically. And then to see more than 300 conservatives on our federal courts, to see us stand with our allies, stand up to our enemies, to call on allies in the European community here to do more for our common defense. I know it doesn't apply to Switzerland, and I respect that history and that tradition, but to call on our NATO partners to live up to their word, to to greatly more participate in our national defense. So for me, whatever difference may have arisen on that day, it pales in comparison to the pride that I feel about all that we accomplished for the American people over those last 4 years. And I'll always be privileged and count it a privilege to have served as Vice President of the United States of America at such a time as this.
Maybe what you really felt, we're going to read it in your autobiography, which will come out in 2023, I heard, and we'll know all about that day and your feelings. Let me finish, if you allow, with a personal question. You quoted the Bible before. It's been written about and it's been talked about. You have your you have a deep faith, you have a deep conviction, you have strong values. Looking back in hindsight at these 4 years as Vice President, did you ever have to compromise, maybe compromise too much? Maybe your compass of values had to be changed, readjusted. Serving, as we know, a president who can be a bit erratic, let's put it that way. Has it changed you? Has it changed your values?
Well, thanks for mentioning my book.
That was to soften the blow of the question.
You know, I have to tell you, and you all are probably going to have to take my word for it. One of the ambitions of the book that I'm writing is I want people to see Donald Trump through my eyes. Mm-hmm. Because the president I served with every day, the energy that I saw, that frankly would be very familiar to the entrepreneurs in this room. Someone who came in every day and said, what are we doing today to keep the promises we made to the American people? The way that we drove tax cuts, the way that we drove regulatory reform. You know, I served in the Congress for 12 years, I mean, there's an old saying in America that Congress does two things well: nothing and overreact. And the fact that we got the Congress to do so much, not everything we wanted to do. We wanted a fresh start on healthcare reform, built on free market principles. But the tax reform, the regulatory reform, the record number of judges, the investments in the military. You heard yesterday from a great leader. Thomas and I were talking backstage. How proud is Switzerland of the associate administrator of NASA during this time? He's a remarkable man. Mm-hmm. But to have revived human space exploration, to have launched a space force at a time, frankly, when we see competitor countries investing in space-based military technology, all of that would not have been possible but for that energy, that drive, and that focus that I saw every single day. And I hope someday to be able to tell the story of that partnership. I mean, some people think the president and I are a little bit different.
Are they right?
He's big city, I'm small town. You know, he's always interesting, unforgettable, bigger than life. I'm not, right? But I will tell you, quite honestly, the bond that we shared was really born of a common experience. And that was his grandfather immigrated to the United States. My grandfather immigrated to the United States, came through Ellis Island from Ireland when he was 23 years old. I was named after him. His father built a business with his own two hands, building housing in New York. My dad built a gas station business in a small town in Indiana. I mean, we were both raised to believe passionately, and we experienced the American dream. And I think the ability to have worked shoulder to shoulder with somebody for 4 years, whatever stylistic differences between us, we shared that common belief in the boundless potential of every American to live out their dreams. And for as long as I live, I'll say to our friends here in Switzerland, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to making sure America continues to be the place where dreams come true, and where those of you that invest in and believe in America can find and realize the same things.
And that will be my final question, I promise. in what capacity, in what position can you do that? We have witnessed you today, and I don't hear an ex-politician speak or a former vice president speak. I hear a politician speak who maybe who wants to do that for more years to come. We all know President Biden is a transitional president. Will you run in 2024? Or do we have to wait for the book to find out?
I'll keep you posted. Thank
We'll
you
keep
all
asking. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.
Great honor to be here.
Vice President Michael Pence. Thank you so much. Pleasure. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. Yes.